forget that with our students. So if they say things, you need to speak back to them as though you're actually having a real conversation. Explain to students that you're not always going to be correcting what they have to say, and if they say to you, "Teacher, was that correct?" you might say, "Right now, I'm not interested in the correction. I'm interested in what you have to say. I'm interested in what you have to say." But students have to get used to this idea that you're not always going to fix the mistakes, and they should not always be asking you, "Was that correct? Was that correct?" Instead of actually getting some answer back from you about what they said. But many teachers tell me that's the first thing your students do, is they say, "Teacher, was that correct?" Instead of actually finishing the conversation, even if it's only 3 or 4 sentences. It could be very small. That's how you start, small little conversations. We call these dialogues. Dialogues. They are typically 2 or 4 lines. You can actually practice these as activities. Students can write short dialogues of their own. You give them a topic. You have them write the questions and answers back and forth. Great practice. Great practice. So just to summarize, let's talk a little bit now about when we do the corrections. If it's an accuracy activity and it's taking place, you can make corrections quickly while students are practicing. If it's a presentation or something like that, you write the notes, you listen, but you wait. You do the feedback later. If you have equipment at your school and you can record something, that's another way to do it. You can use a tape and listen later. If you have equipment, you can video and show it later. Whatever is available at your school. If you have no equipment, that's okay. You can write. This next part's very important. This is the sequence for correction. Let's say you're going to make a correction. Who goes first? Student, not you. You're last. This is, if you remember 2 or 3 things today, this is one of them. Okay? Self, the student's first. Another student is second. And if nobody else knows the answer, then it's your turn. But if you are always first, the students will never get it. All right? So if this is not the order that you do the correction in, I want you to seriously think about changing it. That it's not always you first, you're last. How do you get the student to know they made a mistake? Well, there's lots of ways to do that, so let's look at some of them. Sometimes, if students are practicing an accuracy activity and they make a mistake, you can let them know from your intonation. You can simply repeat the mistake. For example, Nina has 2 foots. Student can tell from your voice that you are pointing out the mistake, but you're not correcting it. The student thinks about it a minute and says, "Foots." Then you might ask the rest of the class, anybody else? Maybe a student raises their hand and says, "Feet." Okay, you didn't have to correct it, somebody else did. So first, the student, then another student, the rest of the class. If nobody knows the answer, then it's okay for you to say, all right? But not first. What's another way? Sometimes the teacher will repeat the information until the error and then stop there. So students know where the mistake is, but not what it is. They have to figure it out. Sometimes teachers will make a funny face, like foots, and they'll go like this. So the student knows there's a mistake, but they're not going to tell them what the answer is. Sometimes if the student makes a mistake with tense, teachers even will use gestures, forward for the past tense or backwards for the past tense, something like that. You can come up with your own signals. Another example would be third person singular. Sometimes teachers will draw a little S up in the air like this without saying anything. Just like this, and student knows, that's the signal for third person singular, I forgot again. Okay, so I'm going to remember to do it. So you don't have to say it. You can find other ways to give them hints that something is wrong. You find your own techniques for what those are. These are for spoken English. We're going to get to written English in a little bit. That's a little bit different. One participant said she took notes. This is an example of how you can prepare a note sheet. Let's say you're going to let students talk uninterrupted, but you want to listen and observe. So I might take a piece of paper. One is grammar. The third one are words and phrases, vocabulary that they use. And the final one might be pronunciation. Maybe words beginning with S they're having trouble with, let's say. So I would write the names of the students on the left-hand side, and then I start to walk around, and I listen to each group, and I make notes about what I am observing. What am I listening to? I heard 2 grammar problems. I heard 1 pronunciation problem. I get a list of the problems, and then when students are done speaking and I am ready to give the feedback, now I might write these on the board and ask the whole class about the mistakes. If I want to do it individually, I can call students up individually and give them feedback privately, not necessary in front of the whole class, if you have that kind of time. Sometimes teachers prefer not to say who made the mistake, but to put all the mistakes on the blackboard and let students see what everybody has done, and then everybody looks at the mistakes and sees how they can fix them. Okay? So you just need to make some kind of piece of paper and some notes of what is your focus. So you pick the focus. Is it going to be a grammar point? Maybe you're listening for the past tense. Try to be as specific as possible. You don't have to listen for every mistake. It's possible one day you only want to listen to verbs, verb tenses. Another day you want to listen to pronunciation. You need to pick the focus of your observation. You don't have to listen to everything and give feedback on everything. Pick the elements they're having trouble with, the most trouble. And those are the ones you're going to give the feedback on. So you need to think about what's the activity, when do I do the feedback, and what is the focus of the feedback. I don't have to give them feedback on everything. Maybe one day I only talk about pronunciation. That's enough. Students can get overwhelmed. They don't hear any of it because it's too much. So maybe one day you just do pronunciation, another day you do verbs, another day you concentrate on third person singular. You decide what it's going to be.